angle added
Yeah, no, I'd
into
be interested to hear your thoughts on it, but at another time maybe.
yeah, okay, good. Hello Ian.
Morning.
Morning, you okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Jackie, you're in a new deck. Have you ever seen that location behind? That looks rather nicer
France.
than some. Yeah, that looked better than some, I thought.
The sun's finally come out. It's been raining for days.
Is it? Okay. Very good. Cool.
We'll give people just another minute, Ollie, and then kick off if that's okay.
Yeah, great. Hi, Josh. Hi. I'm not sure, Josh. I know I owe you an email, so I'll just also just
okay.
while I've got the chance of being here to say it in person, and it's sort of sitting there in my inbox. So I will come back, Josh. If you
Thank you very much. That's great.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. And is Edward Addison Ross Edward or Edward?
Addison Ross Edward. Sorry, I can't seem to get my cameras to work.
Don't mind. Hi Edward, how are you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Should we kick off then, Ollie? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. If you are, we've got no Yash, so we're lacking one expert. So that okay, that means you're going to have to do a lot more expertise on this.
We'll get through it together, Ollie.
Yeah, good.
Excellent. So welcome everybody to our first session after Easter. So many of you have heard Ollie talking about the key numbers you need to know to help you plan your growth, and that was very much based on what he learned during his time at the White Company. So rather than focus on customer KPIs today, we're going to be focusing on the essential web numbers you need, and then talk a little bit about how to move them. All of the customer and web numbers and sales goals are all joined up together. But what we want to help you think about is really what numbers are the essential ones to focus on to help you reach those sales and profit targets. I think it's really easy for us to go down lots of data rabbit holes when we're trying to work out what to pay attention to and what to do. And we'll also touch around some of the problems associated with moving those numbers as well. As you know, Breakfast Club is very informal. We'd love everybody to shout out with their questions. We've recently embraced using the little raise hand icon just so that we can clock when people want to ask a question. And I think the Suite team will also help us by paying attention to the chat. So please do ask away. We love having a good conversation. We'll also send video and takeaway notes after the session. And just letting you know that we generally put this and share this video out afterwards as well. So lovely to see lots of familiar faces and a few new ones here today. So Ollie, do you want to kick off with anything before we get into the detail?
Yeah, I think exactly that, Katie. As you said, I constantly bang on about the 5 levers of growth, and I've just republished that document which I wrote a while ago back onto the website. If anyone hasn't got a handle on the 5 levers of growth, the first one for me is always customer data, and I think, you know, as you say, we don't want to do that today. But I then have this 5th sort of catch-all title which I call brand, which brand is sort of, you know, covers so many things, and I do really accept in my 5 levers that it's a bit of a catch-all. But site performance is what I include in that, because that's really sort of some of the numerical measure of how a brand is doing. And I think what you're going to do today, Katie, is talk a little bit about how you join those two concepts up. So it's really easy, I think, to in our world to effectively create a goal, understand what the customer metrics are, but the knock-on of that is normally then really, and for most people, is around site performance. And I know, you know, Joe, because obviously, you know, a few emails have swapped around. I know that I think is pretty high on your agenda. And I think, Katie, it's really, hopefully today we'll get from people, you know, a few of the tools that you and I have been discussing and a few of the key metrics that are really important. And I can see Al's just come in as well, Al Keck of Infinity Nation. So I'm sure Al will have some bits to chip in. But so yeah, Katie, for me, it's just these are another set of metrics that are movable. And I think what we hope people will go away with today is an understanding of what some of those metrics are. And it's certainly a level beyond just conversion rate, which is probably the ultimate measure that everyone takes. But there's so many more facets to it than that.
Great. So do you want to kick off with some of those primary metrics that we've particularly linked to our growth planning, and then obviously, as you said, that those secondary ones that are really important in terms of contributing to those numbers?
Yeah, I think the first thing we always talk about is the shopping funnel. Hammersley Brothers talk about this really well, I think, if anyone listens to their podcasts. And this is exactly that. It's taking that key metric of conversion rate, but understanding that just to make the statement that I'm going to improve conversion rate is almost impossible unless you break it down into the individual steps. And so, Google Analytics GA4 has now finally, didn't originally have a nice shopping funnel in it, but it does now. Shopify, I think a lot of people with sort of despair of GA4 have started using the Shopify shopping funnel. Both of those are, I would say, the two key sources. I'm still, very much banging on about the benefits of GA4. So, I know that's not where everyone is, but we can deal with that on another day, Katie. But effectively, what one takes from that is that ultimately, in the normal way, the number one thing is understanding about sessions or users at the top of the funnel. And then the thing that I find, so that's that, ultimately, are you, in order to achieve your customer number, it's very rare that you don't have to have a metric around sessions improvement. And that's the first thing. The second thing is that sessions isn't enough. Just to increase sessions isn't enough, because there comes in, first of all, that really annoying stat around bounce rate, or in new GA world, engagement. And I don't know, someone else might want to comment on this, but I only learnt yesterday, so I was, I'm definitely behind the curve, that there's in GA4, they've changed the metric on engagement to now have a bounce rate based on 10 seconds rather than the old one, which was effectively bounce off. So I was, Anmol was on the call. Yeah, I was railing against Anmol, telling me how could she tell me that the bounce rate had dropped to only 20%. Nobody has a 20% bounce rate, until she then quite rightly pointed out to me that the definition has changed. And I think it's probably quite important for people to know that. And we're going to pop that in the newsletter, because rather slowly for me, that was a new learn for me this week. So those are the sort of two top of the funnel bits, Katie. And then I don't know if you want me to sort of, I'll just richly run down. Then it's about product pages, abandoned baskets, and then the checkout metric. So it's add to cart, and then actually checkout. So those are the steps. They're all outlined in the funnel on GA, and really understanding those, I think, is a fundamental, which we join in our the way we do growth model, joining into target sheet, which is the Hammersley term for that shopping funnel, in order to align the metrics, because you do need to have targets for each of those metrics, in my opinion, to make sure you can achieve your customer and sales goal. So
and Ollie, how do you make decisions about which metric you should be moving? What's the sort of thought process you would typically go to prioritize your actions?
Yeah, I think as always, benchmarking is the sort of the usual type thing. And I think, Katie, we can help. Again, Hammersley Brothers give some good ranges around this. There are other bits of material that do this, but if one just takes that really common stat of 2% conversion rate being a average e-commerce conversion rate, clearly that metric changes depending enormously on the type of traffic you're driving. If you're driving paid traffic, then clearly you're not going to get a 2% conversion rate, or rarely are you going to get a 2% conversion rate. So whenever I'm looking at that, for me, I genuinely start at conversion rate. I then look at in Suite World, I look at conversion rate by channel, because your overall conversion rate will very much be determined by the proportion of traffic you're driving from different channels. And the one I often look out for here is affiliates. If you look at your affiliate conversion rate, you'll always find it's about 7-8%. And the real point there is really then as a sort of slight distraction from the overall question, but really understanding, are affiliates really driving additional revenue? Or if you understand the multi-touch point journey, are they effectively picking up your paid traffic, someone picking up a discount code, and all you're really doing then is paying for this traffic twice. You're paying for the conversion twice. So affiliates is one I always, when I'm looking down that sequence, that's always one I look for. So I always start looking at proportion of traffic by channel and then conversion by channel, because those are the background numbers to that overall conversion rate.
Thanks, Ollie. And Yash, I know we were talking the other day about that relationship between sessions and conversions and efficiency. A lot of us obviously are putting extra budget and spend when we're planning our growth models for the new financial year and expecting to see that big uplift in number of sessions, which sometimes has that impact on the conversion rate that Ollie was talking about, depending on the mix. Is there anything that we could or should be thinking about to help us sort of get more from the same? Is that a good strategy to have a think about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my thing has always been, if your conversion rate is 2%, what's happening with the other 98%, right? They're probably not all going to be your customers, but there are other metrics that we can measure. Which pages they viewed, how long they spent on that page. It might just be that they're not quite there, ready to purchase, but they're somewhere, on the way in that journey, and that's basically something. If you look into that, you can get more from the same. You can get more from the same 100 people. Yes, 2 people converted, but there might have been 10 people that probably looked at the product, but they didn't find it in stock, or they didn't like the color, or they might be waiting for payday to come out. Whatever that is, you've got to really get a deep dive into your customers, understand your customers, that you can actually actively put out those sort of sub conversions.
So I think, Katie, if I could just jump in there on, yes, we've obviously been talking about a few things this week on a couple of, and that out of stock metric being a, if we're looking about things that influence performance, and we've had Yash and I've had a shared client that we've been talking about recently, that out of stock, it is often the absolute, the key number understanding performance, because you can look at your web numbers and they may be massively out, and then often it's to do with out of stocks. So if there's one thing that and you can get out of Shopify, they classify your now your products into A products, B products, etc. I think as a sort of subsidiary thing that always when we're talking about life, my sort of go-to before I really start channeling in is, first off, is around out of stocks. And then the second thing, Yash, we've obviously been talking about is then about site speed, being the impact of that upon performance. So sort of outside the sort of GA sales funnel points, I always look at out of stocks and site speed, which you can get, Yash, from Page Insights, Google, Floodlight. I think those are probably the 2 free tools that people can get to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you're absolutely right. If all of a sudden the conversion rate is dropped on a particular product, on a particular page, if nothing has changed in your traffic, the next one to look at is, site speed, make sure there's no issues. And if that's all good, then it's probably out of stock. 9 times out of 10, that's probably the culprit, because there's no reason for it to just drop out of the blue for no apparent reason.
And Dolly,
Katie, we've probably never had done so long with just 3 of us speaking. Has everyone got any questions on what we've talked about so far? If not, but don't worry. But Varney, you're this is a topic you would love. You must any comment you've got here?
Well, site speed is definitely a big one for us because the products that we do are they don't really generally go out of stock because we manufacture them. So that's not something we concern ourselves with. But there's a lot. The architecture of the website is very complex, and site speed is something that is very important because there's a lot of variants to load, a lot of options to load. So it's very high on the list of KPIs that I look at.
Yeah, I think so. So I think that's helpful. I think the takeaway there for everybody is, in your weekly checks or whatever, or if you're beginning to ask about what's happening in your shopping funnel, and it's not looking as you expect to, your go-to things to ask the questions to yourself are, what's my site speed looking like, and gosh, how many products am I really out of stock? And that can be quite difficult because it may be a tail thing. If you're out of stock on mediums, that may have a far greater impact than if you've got five, say you've got 5 sizes or whatever from a structure, it can have a disproportionate impact. So it is, understanding that second bit is really important. And the other thing, obviously, if you're spending money, then obviously it will be affecting where your money is being spent because both Google and Facebook switch off out of stock products. But I can see a couple of hands. Al, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. I think I think out of stocks is key, as you say, and for me, and I think Yaz raised it. What happens to the other 98% of people that come on the website but don't buy, and I think that's often the question that people aren't asking enough. I think the other thing to consider, whilst site speed is important, and looking at conversion by channel, but also by device, I think that's often not considered or often unthought about. I mean, how many of us here today will look at our website on a desktop? Probably the large majority of us. How many of us actually do test purchases, test orders, and go through the customer journey on a mobile device? Probably not many of us. What do our customers do? And I just think too often, there's simple things like, we're talking about site speed. Yes, that's important on a mobile device, but simplistic things where just how to check out on a mobile is made complex, and then people just bail out because it's just too much hard work. And if they really want to buy it, they end up sending themselves a link and then looking at it on their desktop when they're next back in front of one, rather than having that ability to check out and go at the time.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and Simon, I'll come back to you 1 second. But again, just in Suite, it's really easy to select by device. So you look at these numbers by device, because you're absolutely right, Al. I should have perhaps said that as well as looking at by channel, one needs to look at by device type, because again, to state the obvious, look at your conversion rate on mobile compared to your conversion rate on desktop, and again, if your proportion of traffic is all being driven to mobile, again, your conversion rate number will have moved down just because the way traffic is constructed. So I think Al's point is really important there. And again, exactly, probably as a takeaway, that's another really important bit.
I think typically I'm seeing like conversion rates being about half on a mobile versus desktop, but probably double the amount of traffic. And I think a couple of sites we looked at recently, like a 0.7% improvement over 12 months was worth over £1 million of extra revenue.
Yeah.
No one was focusing on it. It wasn't a priority for the business. No one had set a budget towards improving it. So I think, again, it's just such a key number to consider.
Thanks, Al. Simon, do you want to? Sorry, your hand's up.
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks, Oliver. My interest really is from right at the top of the funnel, in relation to the impact of awareness and brand reputation in terms of driving that site performance. Obviously, right at the top of the funnel, you talk about conversion being website visits converted ultimately into sales. but I'm interested in what insights you might have or data that you might have that looks at that top of the funnel element.
I think if I've got sort of two things really there that sort of look at. So one, I always say that, you know, awareness over time increases. So, you know, if you've, you know, and this is the same dynamics that we have in the growth model between existing and new customers, the longer you exist, you know, as long as you've done a good job, you've got more existing customers come back, you've got more existing traffic, you've got new things. So in terms of moving that sessions number or that top of the funnel number, there is an element of time that hopefully means that you should see a growth. So just like on the growth model and customer numbers and sales, you should see a growth if you've got a good brand that's growing. So that's always one element that I think comes in. The second bit, Simon, is, you know, I hate to say it, but, you know, I find it very rare for any brand to really start moving those top, you know, awareness numbers without spending money on all the usuals, Googles, Facebooks, Bings, etc., etc. So I think at a sort of simplistic level, I don't really have any way of moving, you know, one's got organic social, one's got all the usual things that I'm sure everyone's doing. So one sort of ticks down the channel list. But in terms of fundamentally moving and growing a brand, unfortunately, I've got very little to sort of at the top level say other than one has to spend some money and one has to.
You have to do it.
You have to do it is the answer.
Yeah.
Yes, is the answer.
Yeah.
Not always a bit painful and as effectively as you
Yeah.
can, but you have no choice really.
Have you got
Anyone else?
any that's very
There you go.
helpful. Have you got any metrics in terms of you talked, your first point was awareness over time will sort of, in your words, naturally grow. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that's making an assumption on you know, the quality of marketing that you put into that. But have you got any dimensions about what is, you know, a reasonable target? I guess it will depend on what phase of growth your business is in inevitably, but I'm just interested to know whether you have any barometers.
Exactly. I think the barometers we're better at is, to be honest, is on the customer metrics.
Yep.
Because effectively each type of business has a different set of things. New and existing users in GA world is an important stat, but the problem about it is it doesn't really relate to new and existing users. It just relates to people coming back or whatever. So I don't particularly, personally, I don't spend a lot of time looking at those stats. The real thing, so is really around, you know, the metrics, and very happy Katie perhaps do a separate session with Simon around his business and, you know, what those likely metrics are, because, you know, if you're a jewelry business, you're just going to have less existing traffic than you are if you're a fashion business or a vitamin business, etc. So I think I've probably got a better feel for the customer metric side of that and what it should expect and by industry than probably sort of web metrics. Personally, I don't know if anyone else has got anything to comment on that, or if you want us to move on that point.
I don't want to dominate the discussion, but on those customer numbers, do you have have some references?
Yes, exactly. So Katie, why don't we just make a note, and if you can pick up the Simon afterwards, we can deal with that specifically.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
One of the other metrics in that sort of sphere about how do you grow your pot of people, and it's one that certainly the Hammersley brothers talk about a lot, is that email data capture. So if you're busy spending lots of money on traffic to your website, and their benchmark average they sort of advise people to go for is around sort of 8 to 10%. So if you can be really good at capturing email addresses from 8 to 10% of your visitors, you then have a better opportunity to have a conversation with those customers that are not yet ready to buy. Ollie, I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, funny. I've off that stat. I've designed up a dashboard. We haven't launched it yet, but because it's quite a difficult one to actually just get effectively new contacts. Effectively, if you're on Klaviyo, new contacts divided by number of sessions is the metric the one's talking about there, or users. Katie, you might have to clarify after this which one they particularly use. But I do agree. I think it, you know, if we're, you know, in the current world, what is the way of getting people to come back is generally email. The more emails you have, the more chance you've got people to come back, because you can continue that dialogue in a whole variety of ways. And I agree with you, Katie. I think very often it's not necessarily a metric that people focus in around, and I think it's a good one that they're highlighting. I'm afraid I don't have an immediate solution for it, but I think, you know, even if it's just on someone's checklist, to occasionally just check, you know, how many emails have we actually generated in the last month compared to how many sessions, it creates that focus around that particular point.
And the other metric I just want to throw at you, Ollie, which I think the guys at Conversion Wise very much talk about in terms of efficiency and all of that sort of stuff, is revenue per session or revenue per visitor, particularly if you're getting into the realms of testing and optimizing and all of that sort of stuff. How important is that, or when should we be looking at that metric in terms of our planning?
Yeah, really important. And again, yes, you and I have been talking about this quite a lot recently. You know, the sort of the order of priority is really making sure everything on your site is you know, site speed's good, you know, everything sort of technical is done, and that you know, both, you know, some of the Yash can comment in a moment, but, you know, sort of technical SEO, all the sort of basics of the site structure need to be at a maximum. And then, you know, where I'm really sort of advising people at the moment is around this CRO piece. And, you know, your website, you know, and I think this is so often happens, and God, I do it at Sweet myself. You know, you do your website, you think that's it. You know, website and website testing is a absolutely ongoing practice. And, you know, one of the problems I'm having at the moment is, you know, finding for smaller brands a really good cost-effective way of doing it. But, you know, even if you just, you know, use your own skills on your web development, there are, you know, you can run, you know, effective A/B testing. You know, I was with a client this week. They'd done an offer on a Tuesday. It's called the Tuesday offer. It's really successful. But if I actually just had a look at how prominent that was on the website, and how much more they perhaps could have done just with a little bit of CRO testing of showing two different variants and then learning something. CRO is, you know, once you've got your basics covered, once you know where you want to go, the CRO is for me the go-to way of improving your performance. And that, Katie, as we know, that, you know, and you know, that can be done with help. That can be done Conversion Wise in particular. Have a very good academy that we've been talking about a bit recently, which is a sort of online course way. There are really good books on CRO. Keris doesn't have her surname on here, but her father has written an extremely good book on the topic. And you know, Keris, you better put the title in the chat while we're at it. But you know, it's that in particular, that's my go-to book when I sort of wanted to get my head around what are all the things that we could be doing on influencing site performance. So CRO is the go-to topic as far as I'm concerned, Katie. Once we're in.
And I think linked to that, Ollie, Mark and Ian Hammersley have just been doing their Domino series, which is a great common sense approach to thinking about your customer journey. And they've got great examples across sector. They've got a really good sort of logic to thinking through the customer journey process. So a lot of what we're talking about is quite often common sense. I think, Ollie, it's just as you were talking about, is how do we systematize this? How do we do it cost efficiently? How do we track and measure if we're smaller rather than bigger in terms of our analysis?
Yeah, I agree. on that. Yes, do you have any, because we've obviously been talking a bit about tools and things like that, you know, both on the site structure bit and then perhaps CRO stuff a bit.
Absolutely. So I think for me, when you come to understand the site structure, you know, there's the page speed inside, you can use SEMrush, there's a bunch of different tools that help you with the technical. That done, I use is GA4, you know, puts in that data from like a bird's eye view. If you can read GA4, you can read the reports, you can read the funnels. Like CRO is basically just common sense after that point. And then obviously there's tools like VWO, there's Hotjar, which are very, very good at letting you sort of watch session recordings, look at heat maps, and then also run some tests. So they all sort of come into it. But I think the tool that's free and readily available to everyone is probably GA4. And it does essentially about 50% of the heavy lifting when it comes to you know, optimizing your website or optimizing your web journey. Another little thing that I always like to say with CRO is it's just about understanding your customer. If you can understand who your customers are, what cohorts they're in, what segments they're in, and what they're looking for, it's just then about meeting their expectations on your website. So I don't think CRO is a rocket science activity. It's fairly simple. But it does take a little while to get your head around it. But once you do it, it sort of starts falling into place.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, and yeah, I mean that's I think really important. You know, is that we've been talking. You know, there's convert.com, there's VWO. There are a number of different platforms that do this. But I think, you know, what really comes across on all of those is you have to have a theory to test. And, you know, everyone here knows their business is better than anyone. You've probably got, you know, 5 theories off the top of your head that you would want to test. And, you know, I suspect that would be the, you know, the start point on for many people on that. And Hotjar, exactly, for those of you who don't use Hotjar, there's a free version of Hotjar where you can monitor your site performance, actually what the user experience is very easily. And Microsoft Clarity does very, very similar job on that. And again, that's Katie, that's free, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sam, you use it on our website, so you'll definitely. It's definitely, you know, usable for everybody on that.
Just be careful of the site speed impact of Hotjar. You might have to have it on and off it, not rather than having it on constantly.
Yeah, it's a good point. Do you have the same view on Microsoft Clarity, Al, or just Hotjar?
I don't think we've used Microsoft Clarity. I think there's another one we've been using. Is it called like Orange Peel, or I can't remember exactly. I have to ask the team. I can let you know. But there's another one we've been using as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, I've also noticed that with Hotjar that it does slow down site speed. So we've switched to VWO, which has 0 impact on the loading times. So that's quite a good alternative as well.
Okay, great. So we'll put that in the notes, Katie, for everyone afterwards.
And Ollie, I think your point about, you know, the art of asking good questions is, you know, really well made. And I think, you know, I'm sure actually, Keris, in your dad's book, he's got a great Q&A process to sort of walk through in terms of coming up with your list of theories and then thinking about, you know, kind of what the impact of moving that number is. So how big is the opportunity, but also then contexting that against how easy it is to test and do that kind of test. And I think what you're trying to get then is a hierarchy of things to look at. Yash, you can probably jump in here with processes around that, but I think it's just all about you know, sitting down up front and thinking through all of that to then try and work out what to look at in what order.
Katie, should we just see if there are any, because I expect we've covered quite a lot of ground there, and I just wonder if there are any questions before we sort of run out of time. If not, I'm happy to talk about a few other things. But any questions for anyone around that? Bunker mentality team, this will be the first time you've never had a question. Sorry, Jackie. Sorry.
I had a question. It's a bit of a detail, but it's something that's troubling us at the moment, which is about these affiliates and how to manage them. What we were recommended to sign up with Awin because we were told that and kind of shown by some other brands that they managed to get some editorial stuff through Awin. But in fact, all that's happened is that these discount and coupon sites seem to capture. I mean, we sell a lot through that, but would we sell those products anyway? And I just don't know how to work that out.
Actually, funny, Sam and Anmol are doing a big piece for a client this week on this, Jackie. So, Sam, perhaps when you've done some of that, anonymously, we can share with Jackie. But the real point to understand there, Jackie, is one, understanding on the affiliates platform, who do they say is really giving you your sales? Yeah, and so often you find it's the heavy discount platforms when you've been sold on that you're going to get a whole lot of people, new people on it. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we can do in Suite is we can understand the customer journey to that last, because it's very rare that affiliate sales are not based on last click. That's why they hate GA4, because obviously it doesn't give all the credit to affiliates. So if you ask affiliates about GA4, with the data-driven model, they hate it because it doesn't do last click. So the two things really are, Jackie, is one, understanding what are they really giving you, then really understanding whether it's really generating new customers, and you can do that through the touch point analysis in Suite. So Sam and more, perhaps you could just pick up with Jackie separately and just help her just unravel a little bit about whether we think that's really adding value. But if you just look at channel level, Jackie, it's not believable when you see that I haven't got yours open, but I'm going to take a guess that your affiliate conversion rate is so much higher than anything else, and that is purely because it's traffic switching, and Sam and the guys can unravel that if it's come from paid search, etc. Now, some of that will obviously always be incremental, but it's not what it's claimed to be. And I'm not trying to be. Al, you probably got other comments on affiliates.
Yeah, I think you just got to be really careful. It's not, it doesn't impact. We don't make decisions on other channels because you're seeing they're not performing. I think what I call it the acquisition steal. So often what happens is
that's how we feel about it. I mean, would we be better just coming off Awin altogether? And
I think the thing to do is it an open program or a closed program, or I can take it offline and have a conversation with you. But it's open or a closed program, and then doing some testing. I think the problem is, people go on Shopify, see a discount box, go, oh, it'll take me 2 seconds to go and hunt for a discount code. I'll get a discount, and then as you say, you're often then looking at it going, oh, affiliates are doing well, and we saw it with a business that paid. I think they had £1 million worth of affiliate revenue. When we actually dug into it, new customers that actually were gained from that channel were like 200k. So 800k they double paid for, and were then looking at turning down other channels because they weren't performing.
Yeah. Jackie, I think I agree everything I was saying, and Sam and Anmol are doing a piece of work on for someone else this week. So really happy to set up a quick call next week. Perhaps Sam would just take Jackie through sort of the processes that you've gone through, and I'm sure we can very quickly give you a view. But
that would be so helpful, because I've spent a lot of time trying to decipher and work out how this wretched site works, and I just can't. It's so opaque. It's so difficult to understand that we end up not doing anything.
Avon's interface is stuck somewhere in a previous decade and maybe century. I also, Jackie, when we are using Avon, but I manually approve transactions. I know it's a bit of a labor-intensive thing, but I just make sure that I don't don't approve transactions which genuinely came from discount sites. And
keeping on top of that is just almost impossible. We get if I go in every day, it's 20-minute job every day. It's bonkers. Anyway, it would be great to speak to somebody off, because I'm sure not everybody's interested in this topic, but it'd be great to get some expert advice.
I think to us, I think it is a really important topic, and actually, Katie, perhaps we might make a note of sort of giving people.
Yeah, we'll do another affiliates.
Yeah, exactly. How to do, how to review affiliates. We might get an affiliate along to justify themselves, and we might get a few of us.
Bring Avon.
Us cynics along to go along. But I think that would be some interesting debate.
Brilliant.
Ollie, we've got about 5 minutes left. So is there anything else that you want to wrap up with on our web KPIs or anything?
I want to ask, really. No, if not, Katie, I'll just we sort of slightly glossed over at the beginning some of those other metrics like add to basket, which all I'm really doing here is going back to the shopping funnel, but every step of the shopping funnel should have a focus. Is the point. And we've talked quite a little bit about conversion rate, and I think conversion rate is the start point, but going back to the same point that add to basket, add to checkout to order rate, all those kind of things need to be looked at, monitored, and thought about, and then really, going back to sort of same principle of CRO, we're all consumers in our own world. I'm sure you can think about theories that you want to test, and you then need to have web development support to be able to do that in some way. So Joe, your hand's up, so I'll stop chatting. So I can't hear Joe. Can anyone hear Joe? No.
Can you hear me now?
Joe,
yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realise my headset had switched off, but I thought it's recharged a bit now. My quick question was, with limited resource, do you think we should just be focusing on the GA stats that come through Suite dashboard? Do we need to go to GA4? And in fact, even in GA4, is there sufficient, or should I be using like little data or something to create some more funnels? Because those are my sort of three. It's really easy for me to go to Suite. GA4, I'm actually not that familiar with. But then I'm like, well, actually, is there enough there now, or do I have to go and build my own?
Okay, there's an order of play there. Is your GA4 accurate? Which is at Suite, that's that top level little checker. There's a new settings thing that we've just implemented for you to be able to exclude channels permanently. So just making sure that actually you're comparing your e-commerce data with what should be in GA4.
Okay, no, it's not. It's like 150%.
Okay, then it's off is the answer. You can also, little data have a free checker. You can run that as well.
Okay.
That gives you a bit more insight than our checker. But Joe, if you've got that, if you're at 150%, then you're something's off.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I'm sure could help quickly unravel a little bit about that. But so what we're trying to do as Suite is we're in Suite. We wanted to give you, no one wants to wade through GA every day in my personal view. So we're trying to give you ways in Suite of really getting to the core problems as quickly as possible. We won't answer everything, and at that point you would want to go into GA. But the little data bit is really around accuracy of that. That's what little data is a platform to try and improve the capture in your GA. So but there's a cost to it, and I think probably just really getting a first quick unravel of what's the problem. If you're 150%, you have got a problem, Joe. Yes, I do. Perhaps I'll leave you Yash and Joe perhaps to ping each other and just see if we can quickly unravel what the issue is there.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ollie. I think the other thing, just to flag, if people like the Hammersley brothers, I think they're working on an update of their current book. Not quite sure when that's due to come out, but I think that's a very practical doing advice read, particularly for, you know, sort of normal human beings, I would say, if you kind of want to understand what to actually do about some of these numbers that we're looking at, and then you know, have that conversation with your developers or your team on that side of things. Ollie, it sounds like there's probably lots of spin-off topics that we could do as a result of this and break it down. So I think we'll put our heads together and see how we can give people more help in this area, because it's definitely I think an area that we could all do with a bit of sort of guidance on.
Yeah, and I think Katie, we're obviously talking a lot about this at the moment, and there are probably some sort of simple summaries that we'll pull together out of this that will circulate. But I hope, you know, actually it's time really. I hope that that's at least given more enthusiasm back to some of the things to focus upon for everybody. You know, in order to the secondary set of metrics beyond customer metrics around what to really start looking at.
Great, thanks, Ollie. And Yash, I know you're happy to do free web audits, so I'll put your details in the takeaway notes as well on that side of things. So thank you, everybody. We are just about out of time now. I'll pop round the video and the notes in the next day or so, and hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to see everyone. Enjoy the snow, Jackie. Okay, bye, everyone.